I have the model and I've been playing with it a little bit. How is it different, Sam? I'm not an expert at this, so yeah.
There's all these ways we can talk about, it's better at this metric or it's, can do this amazing coding demo that GPT-4 couldn't. But the thing that has been most striking for me is in ways that are both big and small, going back from GPT-5 to our previous generation model is just so painful. It's just like worse at everything. And I've taken for granted that there's a fluency and a depth of intelligence with GPT-5 that we haven't had in any previous model. It's an integrated model, so you don't have to like pick in our model switcher and know if you should use GPT-4o or O3 or O4 mini or any of the complicated things. It's just one thing that works. And it is like having PhD level experts in every field available to you 24/7 for whatever you need, not only to ask anything, but also to do anything for you. So if you need a piece of software created, it can kind of do it from scratch all at once. If you need a research report on some complicated topic, it can do that for you. If you needed to, plan an event for you, it could do that too.
Is it more agentic in nature in the sense that sequential tasking, you're one step closer to it? Because I was trying that.
It's much better at things like that. The sort of the robustness and reliability has greatly increased, and that's very helpful for agentic workflows. So I'm like very impressed by how long and complex of a task it can carry out.
So we did a call a couple of weeks ago when I was bugging you about what sectors and themes to invest in for the next decade. So I don't want to talk about that too much. I thought we'll keep today about first principles and how the world is changing by virtue of all that is changing in the world that you dominate. So the very first thing I want to start with is if I were a 25-year-old boy or girl living in Mumbai or Bangalore in India, I know you've said a bunch of times that colleges are not holding on to the place of relevance they might have had when I was growing up. But what do I do now? A, what do I study? If I'm starting a company, what kind of company do I start? Or if I were to even find a job, what industry do you think has some kind of tailwind? I'm not talking 10 years down the line, but even as close as 3 to 5 years down the line.
First of all, I think this is probably the most exciting time to be starting out one's career, maybe ever. I think like that 25-year-old in Mumbai can probably do more than any previous 25-year-old in history could. It's really amazing what you can do with a tool like this. I felt the same way when I was 25, and the tools then were not as amazing as tools we have now, but we had the computer revolution, and we could do things. A 25-year-old then could do things that no 25-year-old in history before would have been able to. And now that's happening in a huge way. So whether you want to start a company or be a programmer or go work in kind of any other industry, create new media, whatever it is, the ability for one person to use these tools and have great ideas and implement them with what would have taken, decades of experience or teams of people is really quite remarkable. In terms of particular industries, I am very excited about what AI is going to mean for science and the amount of science that one person will be able to discover and the rate at which they can do that. Clearly, it's transforming what it means to program computers in a huge way, and people will be able to create completely new kinds of software in a huge new scale. Definitely for startups, if you have an idea for a new business, the ability for a very tiny team to do a huge amount of work is great. But it feels like this is just now a very open canvas. People are limited to a degree that they've never been before only by the quality and creativity of their ideas. And you have these incredible tools to help you realize them.
Is there anything in particular you want to say about GPT-5? Then I can ask you questions around that.
GPT-5 does feel to us like it's going to be another big step forward in how people use these systems. The level of capability, the level of robustness, the reliability, and the ability to use this just for a lot of tasks in life to create software, to answer questions, to learn, to work more efficiently. Like this is a pretty significant step forward. Each time we've had one of these, we have been amazed by the human potential it unlocks. And in particular, India is now our second largest market in the world. It may become our largest. We've taken a lot of feedback from users in India about what they'd like from us: better support for languages, more affordable access, much more. And we've been able to put that into this model and upgrades to ChatGPT. So we're committed to continuing to work on that. But every time we've had a major leap forward in how the capability we can bring to users, we've been amazed by what those 25-year-olds go off and do in terms of creating new companies or, learning better, getting better medical advice or whatever else.
Is there anything that I could build on top of GPT-5 today as a 25-year-old in India that you think are low-hanging fruits per se that I should definitely look at?
I think you could build an entire startup way more efficiently than you ever could before. Now, this is obviously, I'm biased because this is like near and dear to my heart. But the fact that as a 25-year-old in India or anywhere else, maybe with a couple of friends, maybe just by yourself, you could use GPT-5 to help you write the software for a product much more efficiently, help you handle customer support, help you write marketing and communications plans, help you review legal documents, all of these things that would have taken a lot of people and a lot of expertise, and you now have GPT-5 to help you do all of this. That's pretty amazing.
If I could push you to be like a bit more specific and say, I get science, but what do I study? Say I've been studying engineering or commerce or arts or something like that. Is there any specific thing I study in order to use AI to develop something in science?
I think the most important specific thing to study is just getting really good at using the new AI tools. I think learning is valuable for its own sake, and learning to learn is this like meta skill that will serve you throughout life. And whether you're learning, engineering, like computer engineering or biology or any other field like that, if you get good at learning things, you can learn new things quickly. But fluency with the tools is really important. When I was in college or in high school, it seemed to me that the obvious thing to do was learn to program. And I didn't know exactly what I was going to use that for, but there was this new frontier that seemed very high leverage and important to get good at. And right now, learning how to use AI tools is probably the most important specific hard skill to learn. And the difference between people who are really good at it, really AI native and think of everything in terms of those tools and don't, is huge. There's other general skills, learning kind of like to be adaptable and resilient, which I think is something really learnable. That's like quite valuable in a world that's changing so fast. Learning how to figure out what people want is really quite important. Before this, I used to be a startup investor, and people would ask me what the most important thing for startup founders to figure out was. And my predecessor, Paul Graham, had this answer that has always stuck with me for people and to give to founders. And it became the motto for Y Combinator, which is make something people want. And that sounds like such an easy instruction. I have watched so many people try so hard to learn how to figure that out and fail. And then I've watched many people work really hard to learn how to do that and get great at it over a career. So that's something as well. But, in terms of the specifics, like, are you supposed to take the biology class at the physics class? I don't think it matters right now.
And if I were to build on top of that, and when you say learn to adapt and change and learn AI tools faster, is there a path? I'm just looking for a light that somebody could begin walking towards. How does one get better at the AI tools that are available out there?
Well, one great thing to do, GPT-5 is quite good at helping to create small pieces of software very quickly, and much better than any model that I've used. And in the last few weeks, I have surprised myself how much I've used it to create a piece of software to solve some little problem that I have in my life. And, it's been an interesting creative process because I'll ask it for a first draft. I'll start using that. And then I'll say, hey, with this feature, it would be better. Or with this other thing, I'd be able to do something differently. Or, I have started using it and realized that with my workflow, I really needed this. And by putting more and more of the things that I have to do in this kind of a workflow, that's been a very interesting way for me to learn how to use this.
You mentioned Paul Graham, and I was reading this letter or report he wrote in 2009, where he spoke about 5 founders to watch out for. And I think you were 19 at the time, and he mentioned you along with people like Steve Jobs and Larry and Sergey. Why was that? You hadn't accomplished anything of note like they had. What did Paul see in you? And what do you think is the innate skill set that sets you apart from your peers?
That was very nice of him. I remember that. I remember at the time feeling that it was very deeply undeserved, but grateful that he said that. There's like a lot of people who are starting great companies. We got lucky here in many ways. We've also worked super hard. Maybe the one thing that I think we have done here well is to take a very long time horizon and think very independently. When we started, it was like 4.5 years before we had a first product, and it was very uncertain. We were just doing research, trying to figure out how to get AI to work, and we had very different ideas than the rest of the world. But I think that ability to sort of trust our own conviction over a long time horizon without a lot of external feedback was very helpful.
Is that a we or a I thing? Because I'm speaking about when you were 19.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking about OpenAI. Me when I was 19, I barely remember that. I don't know. I was like a naive 19-year-old that didn't really know what he was doing. And this is not false modesty. My own self, I think I've done impressive things now, but my own self-conception in 19 was like deeply unsure of myself and very unimpressive.
If the world of tomorrow were to be an AI kingdom of sorts, you're definitely some kind of prince. And I don't know if you follow Machiavelli, but he used to say a very interesting thing. He said that a prince should always appear but not be religious, compassionate, trustworthy, humane, and honest. Do you think this particular projection of, I've watched a lot of your interviews of late, and I've heard you say repeatedly that you're not formidable and use words like that. This projection of humility, is it apt for the world we live in or the world you're walking into?
I'm not sure it's apt for either one, but when I was 19, to go back to what you said, I assumed that the people running these big tech companies really had it all figured out, and there were adults in the room, and somebody had a plan, and there were these people that were like way different than me that understood how to do things, and had this like, the companies were like running very well, and there was like not much drama, and everything was like just everything was being handled by the adults. And now that I'm supposed to be the adult in the room, I will tell you, I think no one has a plan. No one really has it all working smoothly. Everyone, or at least I, am figuring out as they go. And, you have things you want to build, and then things go wrong, and you bet on the wrong people or the right people, and, you get a technological breakthrough here, or you don't there. And you just keep putting one foot in front of another, and you put your head down and work, and you have these like tactics that some of them become great strategies, some of them don't. You try something and the market reacts in some way, or your competitors react in some way, and you do something else. And now my conception is everybody is kind of figuring it out as they go. Everybody is like learning on the job. And I don't think that's like false humility. I think that's just the way the world works. And it's like it's a little strange to be on this side of it, but that is what it seems like.
I'm not even, Sam, speaking so much about the authenticity of the humility or not, but more again from the lens of somebody starting to build for tomorrow, because that's who we speak to. Is that a good image to project into the world? Does it, the image of humility really work today?
You mean, should someone project that image?
Yeah.
I mean, I certainly have a very negative reaction to people who are projecting certainty and confidence when they don't really know what's going to happen. And the reason is not just because it's annoying, which it is, but also because I think if you have that kind of a mindset, it is harder to have the culture of intellectual openness and to sort of like listen to other viewpoints and make good decisions. A thing I say all the time to people is no one knows what happens next. And the more you forget that, and the more you're like, I am smarter than everybody else. I have a master plan. I'm not going to pay attention to like what my users are saying or where the technology takes us or how the world is reacting. But, you know, I know better and the world doesn't know as much. I think you just make worse decisions. So having that kind of open mindset and the sort of like curiosity and willingness to adapt to new data and change your mind, I think that's super important. Like the number of times we have thought we knew something to get smacked in the face by reality here has been a lot. And one of our strengths as a company is when that happens, we change what we're going to do. I think that's been really great and a big part of what's helped us succeed. So maybe there are other ways to succeed, and maybe, you know, projecting a ton of bravado into the world works, but the best founders that I have watched up close throughout my career have all been more like the sort of quick learning and adapting style.
And you probably know more about this than most because of your role at Y Combinator.
I have a lot of data points on it, at least.
Yeah. When we met in Washington a couple of years ago at the White House, I remember when we were speaking and you went somewhere, I was speaking to your partner, and you guys had a kid.
We did.
And how is that?
It is my favorite thing ever. But I mean, I know that like I have nothing that is not a cliche to say here. But it is the coolest, most amazing, most like emotionally overwhelming in the best ways and hard ways too. Experience everything everyone said about how great it is, how intense it is, how it's like a kind of love you didn't know you could feel. It's all true. I have nothing to add other than I strongly recommend it. And I think it's been really wonderful. It's amazing.
So I ponder on this a lot, Sam. Kids, why people have kids, and also questions like what happens to religion and marriage tomorrow. Can I ask you why you had a kid?
Like family has always been an incredibly important thing to me, and going like it felt like the most, and I didn't even know how much I underestimated what it was actually going to be like, but it felt like the most important and meaningful and fulfilling thing I could imagine doing, and it has so far, it's still early, exceeded all expectations.
Do you think it's the biological need to procreate?
I don't know. There's like, this seems like a thing that is so deep it's difficult to put into words, but I feel confident. Like everyone I know, looking back on their life, who has had a great career and had a family, has either said, you know, I'm so glad I took the time to have kids. That was one of the most important things I've ever done, the best things I've ever done. Or they've said that was by far the best thing I've ever done. That was way more important than any of the work I ever did. And I was like willing to take the leap of faith that would be true for me too. And it certainly seems like it will be. It's like, it is. And if it is just a biological hack, I don't care. I'm so happy. But it like there's a sense of responsibility and kind of like family is the word that keeps coming to mind that is just really great.
The world seems to be having lesser kids. And do you have an insight into the future of marriage, religion, and kids?
Yeah, I hope that creating family, creating community, whatever you want to call it, will become far more important in a sort of post-AGI world. I think it's a real problem for society that those things have been in retreat. I think that just feels strictly bad to me. I'm obviously not sure why that's been happening, but I hope we'll really reverse course on that. And in a world where people have more abundance, more time, more sort of resources and potential and ability, I think it's like pretty clear that family and community are two of the things that make us the happiest. And I hope we will turn back to that.
As societies get more affluent, if one were to buy into the mimetic desires of people, we all tend to want what other people want, not necessarily what other people have. If we all had more, do you think we would still want more if we all had enough?
I do sort of think that human demand, desire, ability to play status games, whatever, is like, it seems pretty limitless. I don't think that's necessarily bad, or not all bad. But yeah, I think we will figure out new things to want and new things to compete over.
Do you think largely the world retains the current model of capitalism and democracy in a way? Let me give you a scenario. What happens if a company X, let's say OpenAI, gets to the point where it is 50% of world GDP? Does society allow for that? Or
I would bet not. I don't think that will happen. I think this will be a much more distributed thing. But if for some reason that did happen, I think society would say, we don't think so. Like, let's figure out something to do here. The analogy I like most for AI is the transistor, which was this really important scientific discovery that for a while looked like it was going to capture a ton of the value and then turned out to be something that just gets built into like tons of products and services. And you don't really think about, the fact that you're using transistors all day long. It's just kind of in everything. And all these companies make incredible products and profits from it in this very distributed way. So I would guess that's what happens. And it's not like one company is ever half of global GDP. At one point, I did worry that might happen, but I think that was a naive take.
Right. But do you think the odds of the world moving towards socialism go up? Or if something gets that large, will it get nationalized and we become more socialist?
I don't know if something will get nationalized. I don't know if the world will like officially turn towards socialism, but I expect that like social support or redistribution or whatever you want to call it will increase over time as society gets richer and as sort of the technological landscape shifts. I don't know what way it's going to happen, and I expect in different countries it'll happen in different ways. Like, I think you'll see experimentation of like new kinds of sovereign wealth funds, new kinds of like universal basic income ideas, redistribution of AI compute. I don't know exactly what, but I suspect we'll see a lot of experimentation in society here.
On universal basic income, I think WorldCoin was a very interesting experiment. Can you tell us a bit about what's happening there?
The idea was, could we have all this AI coming. We really want to like care about humans as special. Can we find a privacy preserving way to identify unique humans and then create a new network and a new currency around that? So it's a very interesting experiment, still early, but growing quite fast.
If AGI eliminates scarcity by virtue of increasing productivity, could one also assume that it would be deflationary in nature? Capital or money loses its ability to return a rate of return, and capital no longer remains a moat in the world of tomorrow?
I feel confused about this. I think